Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this panel discussion. Our guest speakers today will be sharing their experiences around driving innovation between Japan and Southeast Asia. We'll be discussing the opportunities for collaboration between Japanese and Southeast Asian companies and tapping on our guests' insights on how this connection can grow and be further developed in the future. I'm Swee from KrASIA and will be the moderator for this segment. A little bit about us at KrASIA. We are one of the leading tech media companies in Southeast Asia, covering tech business news and insights from China, Southeast Asia, and India. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity with World FinTech Festival Japan and So Inc. So before we get into today's conversation, let me introduce our esteemed speakers. First, we have Edward Senju, Regional CEO at Sansan Inc., a Japanese provider of cloud-based contact management solutions for corporations. Using Singapore as a springboard, Edward drives Sansan's growth in the region and it aims to establish a business platform in Asia by strengthening the deployment of corporate business card management. He focuses on driving strategic partnerships and service acceptance amongst corporates and has been a key figure in the company's expansion into the wider Asian market. Hi, Edward. It's
Hello.
really good to have you here with us today.
Yeah, nice. Thank you for having me here today.
Awesome. Yeah. So up next, we have Christopher Yo, the founder and CEO of Sentient.io here in Singapore. Sentient.io is an AI and data platform company that seeks to short-circuit the development cycle of software developers by providing easy-to-use pre-trained AI models and data that are domain-specific. Christopher himself is a technopreneur and currently holds advisory and board roles at Credence Partners and CapVista. He was also part of the transformative management that commercialized AI and other software technologies in NUS Enterprise and Exploit Technologies. Hi, Christopher.
Hi there.
Hi,
Good to
great
see
to have you with
everybody.
us today.
Thank you for having me.
And last but certainly not the least, we have Mayoran Rajendra, the Senior VP and Head of Digital Solutions for APAC at SMBC. Mayoran leads SMBC's customer-facing digital transformation initiatives and is in charge of developing new digital financial solutions by utilizing data from customers' value chain and the establishment of a digital partner ecosystem that helps customers on their digital transformation journey. Hi, Mayoran. Nice to have you here.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to some exciting discussions today.
Awesome, great. Now that we're done with introducing everybody, let's just jump into the conversation today. So the first question that I have, I think it'll be great to have Edward and Mayoran's input on this. Some Japanese companies, like SMBC and Sansan Inc., have increasingly created a presence in Singapore and throughout Southeast Asia. What are some of the main points of attraction to working in the region? And what are some of the interesting innovation trends that you think are unique to Southeast Asia? Maybe we can start with Edward on this.
Yeah. For us, basically, Singapore is a hub for doing business around ASEAN countries. Yeah, every information does kind of comes in, and we can think regarding that. If we kind of spot some other countries, we'll be pretty much specific to that country itself. So yeah, we want to put ourselves in the hub like this, like a place like Singapore. Yeah, but we're not only trying to bring the same solution to Singapore and ASEAN countries. We want to actually drive our a product and make it into a much more better thing, which is kind of developing add-ons to what the Japan side had actually made. So yeah, we want to actually change ourselves using this exciting kind of market here. And especially if we think about the ASEAN market and also specifically in Singapore, ASEAN market, the good thing is it's so diverse and we have a chance in every kind aspect. So that's one thing. And if we think about Singapore, all these government initiatives, when the government tries to change the new standards, then this a new chance will be in the market, right? So those are the things that will drive us going forward, and that's the most exciting part that I feel here in Singapore. And I can conclude that that's why we're here in Singapore at this moment.
Awesome, thanks for that. I think I definitely relate to what you're saying, being in Singapore, and I think also in Southeast Asia, it's such a diverse region, and there's so many different requirements and opportunities that pop up at any time. And each of them will always have, some slight difference specific to the country or even
Yeah.
to a few of the countries.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
where the business kind of like opportunity lies. And the good thing
Mm,
is some parts are pretty standardized. So yeah, we can use the same functions or like the same value that our product can produce. But some parts
mm,
are different. So that's the yeah very sweet part about ASEAN markets, I think.
nice.
Yep.
And Mayoran, for yourself, what do you think?
Yeah, so first of all, SMBC Group is one of the largest financial groups in Japan, from banking, securities, leasing, and all sorts of wider financial product coverage. And we are operating in the APAC ASEAN region for the past few decades. But the last few years, as SMBC Group, we are putting a lot of emphasis and focus on creating digital solutions with customers and partners. And when it comes to creating digital solutions, our chief digital and innovation officer, he asked me to move to Singapore and create a hub in Singapore for the APAC region, and initiating these digital initiatives with the customer. So that shows how much of emphasis we are as a group putting in the ASEAN region. So a couple of reasons for that. First one is, as a financial institute, when we are working with the B2B customers, the corporate clients, their the speed of digital transformation, the speed they're adapting into digital technologies, digital platforms, is much, much faster compared to, obviously compared to Japan, even compared to, other regions. So before I moved to Singapore last year, I did a simple, market analysis on adoption of, the digital platforms across the globe. And APAC is 3-4 points ahead of even North America. So the adoption is faster. The new innovations, new fintech players, new technology players pop up. So as I said, two aspects. First one is the customers, speed on adapting the digital technologies and platforms is much faster, which creates the other aspect, the technology providers like new companies, new startups coming up a lot in this region. So that's what we decided to create a hub in Singapore covering APAC region. And my personal experience compared to back when I was in Japan, we are doing a lot of things much, much faster in the region. So that excites me a lot. Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's really interesting to take note of, right? That Asia as a region is really taking to these new technologies and solutions a lot quicker than perhaps other, like you mentioned, perhaps other regions in the world. I think that's really, really cool. And moving on, I think, Christopher, you yourself have spent considerable amount of time throughout your career working with Japanese companies, right?
Yes.
From your Southeast Asia perspective, what is it that attracts you to working specifically with Japanese companies, and how has your experience been?
Very good question. So Sentient.io, we actually provide an AI platform that software developers and companies can use to build AI applications using our APIs. Now, many Japanese companies are looking to adopt AI today. So throughout my career, I've enjoyed working with Japanese companies because of the generally higher corporate integrity and honesty. Although we found that sales cycle may be longer and corporate consensus do take a long time to establish. However, if the project is a go ahead, these companies tend to fully support the projects to make the projects a success. And we found that once initial projects are successful, our business relationships with these Japanese corporations tend to be multi-year relationships. And that is what business is all about. We look after each other's business viability. So that's why I truly enjoyed working with Japanese companies throughout my career. And Sentient.io is my fifth startup that I've started.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I definitely agree with you. I've heard quite a lot, that Japanese companies and corporates, when you're working with them, there's a lot of rigorous due diligence, but I think behind that there goes a lot of there's a really meaningful thought process as to whether or not this partnership
Yes.
is a real win-win for both sides and can really stand, I guess, the test of time, like you mentioned.
Exactly.
Awesome. And for Mayoran, SMBC is, of course, a very well-known brand for its banking services throughout Asia. What are some of the digital solutions that you guys provide for B2B, and what initiatives are you guys, running to push innovation in the region? Perhaps you could share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So as SMBC, we are focusing on two big themes or two big pillars in the context of digital. The first one, the concept we call embedded finance. The other one is the green finance, or the ESG, or sustainability. So let me take the first one, the embedded finance. So this is all about how to embed or integrate the financial solutions or financial transactions in a customer's entire value chain or supply chain. So it's to make it easy to understand. Let me take a B2C example. All of us as consumers, we are using e-commerce literally every day. Once we register our credit card or whatever it is, we don't never bother about how the transaction's happening. We just swap the button and the purchase is done. Next day it's delivered. We never even cared about how the transaction happened. That is in the B2C world. It's a lot of innovation is happening, but the same level or even more of an expectation on the productivity in the B2B supply chain and value chain is required today. I mean, I don't have to explain this because the supply chains are become very, very complex. But for these companies, the time to market is becoming shorter and shorter. So the companies are adapting to many supply chain management platforms, trading platforms, and everything. But still, they need to send papers to banks to get their transaction. So even some, for example, apparel, the entire value chain is like 2 weeks. Some designer is designing a cloth. It's getting produced by some factories in the ASEAN countries and back in the shop floor in Tokyo or somewhere. It's like 2 weeks. They don't have the time to send papers to a bank for supply chain finance. So that's where the expectation is for the banks to have API connectivities with their supply chain management platforms, and then process like a lot of small transactions like within hours. So the concept of embedded finance is to give that seamless experience of the financial transactions in the B2B supply chain. So it's easier said than done. A lot of work needs to be happen on the banking side as well as the customer side. So as SMBC on the embedded finance, we are working with many startups, many blockchain-based platforms. We invested a few of them, even Singapore-based startups as well. So help the customers on board on those supply chain finance platforms. So help the customers digitize their financial processes. And on the other side, within the SMBC bank, we already built these API connectivity capabilities, and using cloud-based solutions. That is very new for SMBC, using cloud solutions, especially outside of Japan, for the processing those like hundreds and hundreds of transactions within hours. So again, if I simplify one aspect, we are helping our customers on board in these digital platforms, also building our own capabilities to digitize our processes to cope up with the customers' solutions and having these seamless integration. That is embedded finance, and we started that from APAC actually. So that is one thing I'm focusing a lot on with customers and partners, especially startups in the region. The other aspect is green finance or ESG or sustainability. I don't have to talk about it. Like decarbonization, climate crisis is the topic today. But when it comes to finance for decarbonization, there are a lot of sustainability linked loans, green loans. But again, customers needs to come up with data, evidence, and justifications to say, hey, I'm reducing this CO2 emission. Mr. Bank, can you give us green loans? So it's a lot of burden on customer side to collect the data, process it, quantify it, and justify to banks to get the loans. So again, we are working with a lot of startups and digital solution providers to provide these digital solutions and tools to help the customers automate and digitize their the process of the decarbonization, and then they can automatically share the data with the bank, so we don't have to go through a tedious process of doing that. So again, coming back to your question, as SMBC in the APAC region, we are putting a lot of emphasis on innovation in the embedded finance, on how to help the customers digitize and improve their productivity in the supply chain. The other side is the green finance or sustainability. So we are working on providing digital tools to help customers digitize their workflow process on the decarbonization. Those are the two aspects we are focusing on.
Interesting. I mean, it really sounds like the key role of digitalization here. I think, as you said, from SMBC with embedded finance and green finance is really to enhance. I guess the word would be accessibility, right, for green finance, not only to make it easier to access finance solutions, but I think also for processes and things like that on the embedded finance side. Interesting. For Sansan, on the other hand, right, I think Sansan is a very unique story of being a startup and then going public in 2019 and subsequently setting up the Singapore office as well in 2018. Japanese startups, right, are not as prevalent here in Southeast Asia as compared to other larger MNCs. And for Edward, do you think Sansan is a blueprint for other Japanese startups to follow? And perhaps what are some key points, tips, or things to avoid that you would like to share with other Japanese startups?
Well, yeah. So for us, I think we're not such a good case for like being a blueprint or a model case. Basically, yeah, we're serving 7,000 customers right now across 51 countries, but I think the scale isn't enough. Yeah. And what we really want to actually think is how we can actually go beyond what we have made in Japan and actually adopt ourselves to each market. Yeah. So the important thing, basically, our strategy is to actually have this a dedicated developer team under us. So many Japanese companies then tend to just bring the solution to that they have actually made in Japan and just fight with that perspective. But here it's more about how we can actually use this a new kind of what inputs or insights or even the law differences to actually make our product much more better. Yeah, so these are the main points that we really think it's important. And I think yeah, I'm not sure why, but mainly even the products that's made in US, basically they don't need to tweak that much to actually bring it into this market. But sometimes basically if it's so yeah, Japan centric, yeah, there are many places to tweak or yeah, things to actually add on to meet the global standards or even go beyond that. Yeah, so having a a development team who can only kind of do our works, yeah, that's a very important thing that we have to keep in mind when we're going outside Japan, I think. Yeah, so yeah, we have our dedicated team sitting in Japan, but all of them are foreigners. Yeah, many from Spain, Brazil, Jamaica. I'm not sure why they're coming from these Latin kind of countries, but yeah, we tend to have this a very hot kind of yeah, nice moving teams over there. So this is one thing, and also when we try to develop a new a product, I think we can just use the other global resources, which is not sitting in Japan but also somewhere in India, Vietnam, many yeah, partners are there, so trying to use those additional resource to actually crack our like own kind of like eggshells and be a new kind of like us. Yeah, that's the always we kind of like think in that way to be a different kind of like product. Yeah, to meet the market. Yeah, that's what we think it's pretty important at this moment.
I think that's also really interesting. It reminds me of another conversation I had with another speaker recently, and he was saying that, when it comes to actually innovating with technology, there are actually a lot of different kind of constraints that you need to balance, right? And that in itself presents challenges. But with challenges, there are also opportunities. And it sounds like that's exactly what's happening with Sansan. While there are, technical tweaks that you guys might need to make to meet the different needs for different markets, that also makes it such that you have to, I guess, listen more closely to the ground and really push the limit from there. I think that's really exciting to see what further innovation can
true.
come out of that.
It kind of like connects to what Mayoran actually said, the kind of like adoption speed and those. Yeah, it's so fast compared to like Japan, and people's requirements are so high. It's not like a taking a step by step kind of like process. They want everything right away. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's like the part that we kind of like struggled pretty much. So yeah, it's a good kind of like a place to like actually polish our products. Yeah, really.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, Edward, I want to resonate with you on that, because here in this region, like, customers
Uh,
are pushing us to be better.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah, they want
because
more
like,
always.
as you said, some requirements I can't even think about them if I were in Japan.
Oh, true.
So one customer in India asked for like you know literally thousands of transactions within 2 hours. That never happened in the B2B banking. So first of all, we were like surprised, but that level of requirement is pushing us to think differently.
That's
So
true.
that's kind of pushing us to go to cloud and everything. So I completely resonate with you on that, Edward. Yeah.
Yeah, so many like surprising like requests, and like yeah, that really kind of like levers our like capacity. That's the best like exciting thing, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's really exciting to see finding all these solutions to the problems. I think that's really the essence of innovation, isn't it? And I think for Christopher, Sentient on the other hand has of course managed to do something that is not super common for Singapore startups, right? Successfully developing and nurturing relationships with Japanese clients. What was your experience in making these connections initially? And are you seeing increased interest from perhaps Japanese investors? Perhaps you could share with us what has helped you connect and get the attention of the Japanese market.
Right. Thank you very much. So in Sentient, my initial connections with Japanese clients came through my shareholders. So my first Japanese client came through an introduction by one of my shareholders, which is A-Star. A-Star is Singapore's largest research institution, public research institution. So they introduced to us my first customer in Nagoya, Daido Steel. So that was a very good thing. So it was a very successful project. And it was my first project in Nagoya. And then my first Japanese investor, which is BNEX, also came through an introduction by A-Star. Subsequently, after that, Japanese clients like Ishikawajima Harima Heavy Industries came through partners like Jetro. And then other clients were started to be introduced to us by my growing portfolio of Japanese investors. So because of our track record with Japanese corporations as clients and a growing list of Japanese investors and banks, we continue to get strong interest for business collaborations coming from Japan. And that comes from different cities like Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya. And so recently we onboarded a new Japanese investor, Real Tech Fund. And so they invested in us because they believe that our growth plans internationally is going to be very strong. So Japan will form a core commercial base for us. So over the last 2 years, we have begun to build a very strong network of Japanese potential investors and clients, as well as business partners. So yes, Japan will remain one of our important markets over the next 3 years. Yeah, so that's how we manage our market penetration of Japan.
Awesome. I think that really speaks to, the entire connectivity of an ecosystem, right? You hear
Yeah, it
from an
is.
investor, or perhaps I think sometimes it doesn't even need to be an investor or someone you're working with. It could just be, there are a lot of different ways in which people can get settled into a new ecosystem and really reach out to the network. And you never really know where that might take you.
Exactly. In fact, SMBC has also brought us to some of their clients, and I'm very grateful for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I think I think going back to what both Mayoran and Edward mentioned earlier, having that learning about the different requirements on the ground. I think working with more localized startups such as yourself, that also helps to keep these companies tune into what's on the ground and tap in on your own local experience as well. So I think that's a meaningful relationship right there.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So I think there have been quite a few tech startup success stories within Southeast Asia recently. And perhaps from a Japanese perspective, I think for both Edward and for Mayoran, is this a trend that you expect to continue? And how would you advise other Japanese companies to perhaps position themselves to make the most of the growing opportunities here? Maybe we can start with Mayoran this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, yes, it's a growing trend. And as also Christopher mentioned, we within SMBC in Singapore, we have a dedicated division, corporate advisory division, to connect the Japanese big corporates with startups in the region and vice versa. So we are putting emphasis on that as well. And also, again, working closely with A-Star. I myself personally involved in some initiatives
Good.
with them, and I've recently connected one big Japanese clients with them for a decarbonization related activity. So that kind of an ecosystem building is it's happening. And one more aspect to your question, Swee, is probably a couple of years ago, probably this is my own personal perspective or observation, is the startups from ASEAN region, they used to look at Japan as a market, which is a great thing. Still, Japan is the third largest economy in the world. It's a huge market, and definitely that's an opportunity. But the way I am seeing, or I'm trying to, going forward, is the Japanese companies working with the startups in the region to serve for this region. So at country for country. So at least within SMBC, we are trying to do that. So sometimes we don't even worry too much about if we can take that the solutions back to Japan. We only focus on, for this region, working with different startups in pretty much all over the countries in ASEAN with different startups, focusing on how we can serve that market, partnering with startups. So I want to emphasize that point for my, fellow Japanese corporates. Look at it in a different lens of how to partner with startups in the region to serve that market. I think that will be a growing trend as from now onwards. Yeah.
I think I definitely think that makes a lot of sense. Edward, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what Myron said, serving that country by like actually having that like a startup wing over there, that's a very big trend that even like my customers are actually trying to like actually build here. Yeah, so we do have like many Japanese companies who are trying to like what who's using our service here across the region. But their main idea is not only about like selling it by themselves, but also trying to like understand what kind of connections that they have for like partnership, investments, and having more like a bigger kind of like ecosystem around their business. Yeah. So yeah, we do see those like trends especially. And talking from like a startup which is trying to like come to like ASEAN countries like us, I think the very important thing is try to like remember the core what we want to like actually do as a company itself. Yeah, try to like stick to those like company's mission and everything, so that people can understand about ourselves like much more easier, so that they can actually bring in partnership kind of like ideas and everything. Yeah. So for us, basically, um, we want to like actually bring in these like innovation from encounters, turning encounters into innovation. This is what our kind of like mission is. So that's why we kind of like focus on this like contact management solution, trying to like connect people smarter. Yeah, this is what we kind of like have in the middle, and we tend to try to say it to like yeah, people around us, and then they'll come back with some ideas. Okay, if you guys are focused on those regions, then areas, domains, then why not partnering with these? Like I think that's one thing that we really need to like yeah, keep straightforward, keep it as a straightforward kind of like thing for other companies.
Interesting. I think so. It sounds like really keeping to the core essence of the company's initial identity and mission
Yeah.
to then sort of like also stand out from the rest in this I would say increasingly competitive landscape.
Yep.
Interesting. And I think for Mayoran now, there have been quite a few interesting developments in Southeast Asia for banking, especially with the rise in B2B banking digitalization. You know, this is something that you spoke about earlier, right? And SMBC has been working on embedded finance as well as green finance in these areas. I'd like to ask you, you know, what are some of the trends or perhaps observations that you've had that has made Southeast Asia unique in this sort of like B2B digitalization trend as compared to Japan?
Yeah, a great question. So, you know, the uniqueness from a banking point of view in the B2B is, you know, when it comes to supply chain, right, in the entire value chain from B2B to C, one unique difference is it's more of a, you know, small transactions, a lot of small transactions happening. And the customers are very, very careful about their, you know, cash management. So let me take a step back and elaborate it a bit, because Japan, you know, because of the negative interest rate and, you know, enough access to fund, so it's the small transactions in a very quick manner and being very, very rigorous on liquidity optimization is not there compared to ASEAN countries. So that is actually, you know, that the embedded finance, the need of embedded finance is much higher here because the customers want the B2B, the CFOs, the treasury, they really want to optimize their financial operations. So even small turnover like cash management or cash flow optimization, the invoice discounting, the supplier finance, everything is more critical. And without digital, it's impossible to serve because you cannot send papers for like, you know, $100 for every hour. It has to be digitized. It has to be automated. We need to use machine learning for, you know, some, you know, anomaly detections and so on. And so it has to be fully digitized. So that the uniqueness coming from the need for more optimized cash management or liquidity management on one side. The other aspect also, even compared to Japan, the ASEAN region is more and more on small and medium businesses. So, and a lot of you know, businesses, the so-called you know, pops and mom shops like. So the other aspect of embedded finance or digital is cash collection. So if you see the QR code payment or so-called digital payment is, you know, spreaded in this region so, you know, much faster than many other developed countries. So that gives us the opening the other door on the digitizing the cash collection, and then, you know, using the data for, you know, better risk underwriting and everything. So in short, this region is really pushing the innovation in the corporate banking because there is a huge need for digitizing the operations because you know, lots and lots of small transactions needed to be happen much faster. The other side, the liquidity needs, the access to cash is more challenging compared to many developed countries. So that is why I personally, you know, find this region is a testing field for us for the corporate banking, innovate ourselves in the digital era.
That's very interesting. I don't think I've really heard anyone put it as such, right? That the region is a testing ground for a lot of other solutions, and I think that's quite an interesting perspective, especially when you mentioned there's quite a lot of SMEs and really a lot of traditional businesses, perhaps run by an older generation, who are not on a day-to-day basis, who are not as in touch with consumer digital solutions or consumer technology, right? And I think it's the interesting part is really getting them to switch onto digital and moving that whole cycle forward. A couple of last questions here, since we are running out of time. I think for Edward, perhaps you could share with us what are some of the trends that you are seeing for Sansan, and what are some new opportunities you are looking to explore?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, we're in a pretty exciting moment, starting a new service here, which is actually capturing all these like invoicing data and trying to like make it as a one-stop cloud service for like the customers. Basically, invoice itself is pretty similar to what like the contact management is. Like for the contact management service, we were capturing all this like business card data from like paper, and also capturing these like email signatures like from the customers. So all these data are so fragmented, and it's unable to like actually manage it in one source. So this invoice is pretty much the same. It expresses which company met which company and what's the results of it. So it's pretty much stuck to our like mission itself, but it's in paper and PDF and those kind of stuff. Yeah. So we want to like actually provide a way to like handle all these like invoice data in one stop, including like receiving the paper invoice in behalf of the customers and kind of like scanning it into the cloud for them as well. So it's a combined SaaS service with like outsourcing parts as well. But this is like the new service that we want to start off. And actually it's going to be connected to this like e-invoicing kind of like initiative as well. Singapore has this like PEPO in place already, and Japan is trying to like bring it in from like 2023 using the same PEPO like a base kind of like solutions. So being like a hub for that, like connecting Japan and like Singapore's like a trading kind of part. Yeah, that's one kind of like market that we're seeing right now. And yeah, that's another exciting things that we are trying to like start here in Singapore. Yeah.
Awesome. I think hearing about that, and I think also going back to a little bit of what Mayoran mentioned earlier, all these B2B solutions may not seem as immediately, I guess, sexy as compared to some consumer technology that we usually see in mainstream media. But I think that's the thing where we don't realize that there are all these small problems or small obstacles that really require some form of digital solutions in order to make things more cost efficient and time efficient for companies, really. I think for Christopher, I'd like to ask, from your perspective, companies looking towards expanding into Japan, and I think being a Singapore-based startup, also for Japanese companies looking to expand into Southeast Asia, maybe you could share what are some useful cultural expectations and misconceptions that people on both sides need to be aware of.
Right. So for companies looking to expand into Japan, we always need to understand that Japanese corporations or companies need to build consensus in business decisions. And this takes a long time. So we cannot rush this. We need to be patient. And it requires us to engage several stakeholders at the same time. So it's not just that you find one champion and then you hope that this champion can make a miracle in making the business succeed. So we need to be more patient. Language is also an important consideration because some Japan-based stakeholders may only speak Japanese, so that we need to be able to overcome that by perhaps finding Japanese translators within the team. So that's one of the key things we need to be able to do. And for Japan companies coming over to Southeast Asia, one of the key considerations here is that there are many companies here, very diverse companies across Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, all with different languages. So Japanese corporations looking to work in this region have to ensure that their people also are able to accommodate the many different languages in the region. There is one misconception that Japanese corporations only want to work with Japanese vendors. Well, that's not true nowadays. So these days, to a large extent, Japanese corporations are willing to work with non-Japanese entities as well. But the most important consideration here is quality and reliability. So these are some of the things that companies need to be aware of when they want to work with Japanese corporations, and vice versa.
Interesting. I think having reliability and quality, they're always going to be these cornerstone qualities that I think each startup or each company should really look out for, I think, when wanting to embark on, I guess, forging cross-border relationships and cross-border partnerships within the region. I think, especially in Asia, knowing how to build relationships around the so many different types of cultural notions and languages, like you mentioned, is such an important thing. And one last question for everybody. So once borders are more open again, and we can all perhaps travel to Japan, what will be the first thing you will order once you land in Japan? Maybe we can start with Mayoran for this one.
That's an interesting question. I didn't think of it. So the interesting thing is I can't wait for the borders to be open. In the last 20 years, 2021 is the year I'm not going to be in a plane, most probably. I hope I can get in a plane in December, so that wouldn't happen. But anyway, jokes apart, probably the first one I would order in Haneda Airport would be a soba, because that is the most authentic Japanese food for me. I can't wait to have that.
Lovely. It's very hearty. I would say sort of like spokesperson dish for Japan. Edward, what about yourself?
Yeah, I want to go fishing in Japan, basically. Yeah,
Wow.
just catch it and then eat it. Yeah. So I was born in a fish town, so yeah, a port town. So that's what I want to do.
Nice. The freshest sashimi
Yeah,
that might be out
just
there.
catch it and put it by hands and eat it with shoyu.
Nice.
I already got,
I can thank you guys for that. Yeah.
Awesome. And Christopher, yourself.
Yes, for me, I will head straight to Tsukiji because my favorite beef supplier is in Tsukiji, and I miss all the quality Japanese beef. And his Japanese quality beef is the best I've ever found in Tsukiji.
Wow. Nice. I might need to get that contact from you after this conversation. That sounds really good. Awesome. And with that, I think we've come to the end of this panel. Thank you again very much, gentlemen, for all your opinions and insights. And thank you to the audience as well for tuning in. I believe there's still some activities ongoing at this World FinTech Festival Japan, so stick around for that. And yeah, thanks again, everybody. Hope to see everyone again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.